Hi, I'm David Goforth with Cooperative Extension Successful Gardener. Asparagus is one of my favorite plants this time of the year. We'll go outside and pick some and start eating it fresh when it first comes on, but before long we're grilling it, or we're frying it, or we're baking it, steaming it, putting it with cheese, putting it with olive oil. It's a wonderful plant. It's actually a very healthy plant too. It's got a number of different antioxidants and phytonutrients in it. Rutin is one of the more common ones that's better known, but there's also some additional ones that are very helpful, both health-wise and it also just makes good food. Actually, asparagus has been with us for a number of years. The ancient Greeks and the Romans very much loved this plant. In fact, they say the Romans would put it into a chariot and run it up in the mountains and stick it in the snow on these snow-covered mountains until such time as they'd bring it back during the summer. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but they did dry it for use. I don't particularly like it dried. I normally just eat it when it's fresh, but it has been around for a long time, and it's a very useful plant, and a very good plant, very tasty plant. And it's one that you can put in your flower garden outside. This is the way you buy asparagus. You would want to get a cultivar, probably Jersey Giant or Jersey Knight. Both of them have been proven in this area very well. They will grow up a very tall asparagus compared to the varieties we had just a few years ago. And the other thing is they're all male, which the male plants will not set seeds, so they get better yields. In addition, you don't have to constantly weed out the young seedlings that are competing for space and competing for nutrients and light and things like that. So an all-male plant such as a Jersey Knight or Jersey Giant is proven for this area. This one right here happens to be Jersey Supreme, which is the newer one that we're trying for this area, but we expect it to do even better than perhaps Jersey Knight or Jersey Giant. We'll just have to wait and see on that. But you'll get this plant right here. This is called a crown, the asparagus plant. It's got the roots here with the crown level right here. It's actually a member of the lily family. So we've seen some lilies that will shoot up like this. This one will shoot up in the spring, and that's actually the part that you break off and eat. It's important to get this about the right depth. And you see a lot of different things in the literature. You get to reading about it, they talk about it planting. I've seen things that talk about planting them as far as 12 inches down, which is way too deep for our soil here. They're typically grown in sandier soils than what we have, but they do very well in our clay soils. I've got them even in heavy clay and seen them in heavy clay doing very well. In our soils, I would say that you want to get this down about 4 inches, 4 to 6 inches down, which means you have to dig a little bit deeper than that, and you also want to spread out these roots. So I'm going to start planting it right here. And if you're planting it within a flower bed, you probably want to give it about 12 to 15 inches of space around it. This one here, we're going to plant these in a single row. These are actually in a row situation like a garden, but we'll plant these about 15 inches on center here within this row. And what we've done is we've trenched down here just a little bit. When I finish up, this is going to be right at 6 inches down from where I expect the top of the plant to be. And you'll want to spread out the roots a little bit here, get them on this like so, and then pull in the soil till it's about here. Now we're still about 4 inches below the level of what we will be eventually. Eventually it'll be up about this level right here. And over the course of the summer, as these continue to grow this first year, you'll continue to pull it in. And that's sort of the last time you'll have to do that. From then you just worry about the weeds and you can pick it. So we'll go along here and plant several like this. You can see them coming up here. Typically we would suggest planting these in March, but a number of the people that order them, they don't get the orders until April or May or so. And so that's sort of when you get the order, you have to plant them. And of course, if you had some that were already coming up, you could plant them a little bit different here. But bringing the soil down, covering up your roots, spreading them out here to where they'll get, and leaving these sprouts just a little bit at ground level right here is sort of what we'd want to do. Planting asparagus like this is not something you'll have to wind up doing every year. The literature says about 15 years, but I've got going to in the 17th year and looking very strong, and I've heard tales of them and seen pictures where they were 20 to 50 to even to 100 years of age, these asparagus plants. So make sure you do it right, get the soil right to begin with, and it should last you for a number of years. Now, the average we say for an individual is 10 crowns, and 10 crowns is more than actually my family will eat per person because of how productive they are. but it's sort of a starting point, and that'll give you some to play around with pickles and stuff like that. But mostly I've got to where I just eat them fresh, and then I don't worry about them until the following year. Now once these things get going, they're fairly carefree. It is helpful to keep these things weeded, and to do that, you may hand pull a few weeds the first few years, but once they get to going, they're fairly competitive. And sometimes you can come by before these things pop up in the spring. You might do just a Roundup application actually over the top before you get any foliage up and kill what winter weeds are there. That will make it a lot easier to find them and a lot easier to pick them. But then as they come on up, if you don't have any competitive weeds like Bermuda grass or something, they will do all right without a whole lot of weeding during the summer. They're fairly competitive because they're so tall and shade the ground so well underneath them. You know, you might have to pull a few weeds occasionally during the summer. Insect and diseases are not a big problem. There's an asparagus beetle that I've had problems with before, and the asparagus beetle will distort the stems is the main place I see the problems. They'll also chew on the foliage up high, the feathery looking like foliage that gets on up. They'll occasionally chew on that, and they can be controlled with just a simple application of 7 or permethrin or cyphalothrin or something like that. The other thing that really helps on these is to have a plant in the carrot family, something like dill or Queen Anne's lace or something like this around the area, particularly the year before. And a lot of times the predators that are attracted to that will carry over and do a pretty good job of controlling the asparagus beetle in future years. And so keeping some of those type of plants, allowing them to go to seed, is helpful even for the asparagus beetle. That's the only real problem I've had with. Now some people have problem with aphids getting on them on into the summer, which is makes it real bushy looking, not as beautiful a plant. I don't see that as much of a problem in home landscapes, but in commercial fields, they'll occasionally get that. There's a few diseases that are listed in the literature. I really don't see much problem with diseases. One thing I would recommend is during the winter months, somewhere, you know, January, February, March, to go ahead and cut this foliage back, or even as early as November when it turns brown. Allow the foliage to turn brown and you can cut it back. Now, the first year after we plant these things, we would not want to come in here and do any picking this year. But the following year, it's fine to go ahead and pick, you know, just 1 or 2 times the following year. In fact, that's sort of what we recommend doing now. Years ago, we would say you need to wait 2 or 3 years before you could pick anything, but that's no longer the way we do it. We'll start off, we'll pick maybe just a few spears the first year, maybe a couple of weeks the second year, then 4 weeks the third year, and finally get on up to a full 6 to 8 week picking period. And you can keep snapping these things off. Most of the time homeowners just go out and snap them off right at ground level, which makes the simplest way of snapping them off. The commercial people will actually go down and cut about 1 inch below ground, but the homeowner snapping them off at ground level works fairly well. And you just need to keep up the time. From the time you first start, go about 8 weeks, and then you need to finish with the snapping them off like that. And that's pretty much the care of them. Now, they do require a lot of fertilizer. It helps to have the first year have a little bit of phosphorus down to begin with. Make sure you got plenty of phosphorus, and that's really all you need of that. And then the nitrogen and potassium, they do well with fairly high rates of potassium. They are fairly tolerant plants of saline soils or salty soils, and some people will try to use salt for a weed control. I do not recommend doing that. Even though the asparagus will tolerate it, you're ruining your soil, and eventually it's getting on down into the groundwater and things like that. So I would use a regular weed control methods to control the weeds here. But this is the kind of thing, again, you can put in your flower garden. It will complement a lot of different flowers around the house, and you'll have something that's edible and very useful in the spring of the year. If you got any questions about asparagus, give me a call at the office. And until next time, plan and plant for a better world.